It's been kind of a weird year to be a NieR video game enjoyer. I mean, it's been a pretty weird year in general, but just even more so if you keep up with the games made by Funny Headman. There have been 2 NieR game releases this year alone, which is coincidentally the exact same number there was between the years 2010 and 2020. Not only that, but the gap in reception between these two 2021 NieR games is pretty stark if you really start to think about it. NieR Reincarnation had an alright plot, but it was really lacking that big punch Yoko Taro games are known for. Its second story just came out a few days ago, so while it's still ongoing, I think it's safe to say that most people have flown the ship on that one. NieR Replicants, on the other hand, got universal praise for not only improving the gameplay and visuals, but also by adding a ton of additional content, making it the definitive way to experience the original game. Unless you're like a diehard Papa NieR fan or something. Fast forward a bit, and it looks like we're going through this whole thing for a third time this year, with Voice of Cards The Owl Dragon Roars. Now, Voice of Cards isn't a NieR game, nor is it a Drakengard game, but it is a game made by a lot of the same people who worked on those projects. The band is back together, and if you don't count Reincarnation since it's a mobile game, or Replicant because it's a remake, this is the first time we've got the Taro team all back in the same room since 2017's NieR Automata. Yeah, there's a lot of conditions on that last sentence, but what I'm trying to say is, I was feeling pretty hyped leading up to this game's release. Side note, this game was teased in July, announced in September, and then released in late October. I don't know about you fellas, but I vastly prefer this kind of time frame over games being announced years in advance and then having to drag, quote, hype along till the release date. So, the only question on my mind leading up to the release was, has the Madman done it again? Well, now that I've completed the game, I think I can answer that. Since this is a hot release and I'm, not a savage, obviously I'm gonna keep this spoiler free, so you ain't gotta worry about that. You good to go? Then let's get into this.
こんにちは。いや、こんばんはですかね。
When this game was announced, there was a lot of confusion about what exactly it was going to be. We knew it was a, quote, RPG made of cards, but there's a lot of ways to interpret that statement. Don't know if anyone expected it to literally be an RPG made of cards. On one hand, it's an aesthetic choice that hasn't been done much before. On the other hand, I can see it turning a lot of people off. Not me though, I love weird, bold aesthetic choices like this. This aesthetic choice makes a lot more sense now that the game's development history is a bit more transparent, and you can see that it used to involve those 2 cursed words, mobile game. Yeah, it turns out that this thing was originally meant to be a mobile social game, but that was nipped in the bud by our hero Yosuke Saito, producer of NieR Automata and this game. Voice of Cards was made into a full-fledged console game, but what would remain true is that this game was going to be a small-scale project. You've probably already seen some videos and screenshots, but yeah, literally everything in this game is represented by cards. Characters are cards, skills are cards, dialogue is cards. There's a real commitment to this art style. Yoko Taro said he wanted to create an experience of a story being told by an otaku game master, and yeah, I think he nailed it pretty hard. It really feels like you're in some game hall and someone's crafting a story made just for you. When the demo dropped, a lot of people were worried that the full game was only going to have a single voice actor. And, well, yeah, I can confirm that the Game Master is the only voice you're going to be hearing in this game. Kinda, I mean, during this one fight, this character is voiced, or maybe it's just the Game Master putting on a different voice? I don't know, man. The game is like 1.1 voice actors then. I don't make the rules. The single voice actor choice was for 2 reasons. The first being it fits the aesthetic the team was going for, and the second is because this is a low-budget game, and sacrifices had to be made. Now, is this a negative? Yes, kind of. It doesn't hurt the game too much, but I wouldn't have minded a few more voices in the game, especially for the main characters. Now, I know there's a big debate on voice language in games. In particular, a lot of people prefer the voice language for the YouTube videos they watch to be in English, especially if they plan on just listening to the video. I totally get it, but in Japanese, the Game Master is voiced by Hiroki Yasumoto, the voice actor for Pod 042 and Grimoire Vice. So, you gotta understand, I can't just not play this game in Japanese.
私?私は君の冒険を眺めることしかできない傍観者だ。
Now, being a quote, card game, you'd be forgiven for thinking this might play something like other card games. Even I fell for this trap. When it was first revealed, my mind immediately went to Slay the Spire meets Drakengard. The game reminds me a lot of Dragon Quest, to be honest, and that's only half because they both got dragon in the title. It's your standard turn-based RPG fare, with some slight twists. The things you expect are all here. You and your enemies take turns, you got attacks, spells, skills, and the goal is to make Badman's number go to 0 before they do the same to you. Instead of a mana pool, you've got this crystal system where you generate a crystal every turn. Skills will cost crystals to use, and by storing them and using them at the right time, you've got this risk-reward system where you're encouraged to think about the right time to use your high-cost abilities. I don't know if low numbers RPG is an official genre description, but I think those are 3 words that describe voice of cards pretty well. Unlike other RPGs where your individual stat numbers can easily climb into the hundreds, in voice of cards, even at max level, you don't really go above 50 in anything. You're also generally given all the information you need on the battle screen, and with the low numbers, it means you can mentally ballpark the effects of each action with some quick math. You know, if you can count, which this game has proven time and time again, I can't. This can turn more difficult encounters into something that kind of feels like a logic puzzle, as you crunch numbers in your head for 3 turns in advance. Other than that, pretty much everything that comes to mind when you think of an RPG is here. You earn golden EXP, buy weapons and armor, find items in treasure chests. The only difference is that it's all done on the front face of a card. The game doubles down on its tabletop theme by having things like random events on the world map. It's usually stuff like rolling a die to perform a skill check to avoid damage. Honestly, it's really cool, and it does get a few bonus points from me for being novel. Now, it's time to go over one of the main criticisms this game is currently facing, that being that it's too easy. Difficulty in RPGs is a bit of a strange term. If you boil the RPG's broth down to a sweet, sticky glaze, difficulty in an RPG is basically a check if your numbers are at an acceptable level to complete a challenge. Depending on the skill of the individual player, the numbers threshold at which a battle can be considered reasonably possible to beat can be higher or lower. But at the end of the day, any hurdle can be overcome by amassing more stats through leveling up. Or by, raising those numbers with unsavory means. This is obviously oversimplifying things, but it's how we know games like Shin Megami Tensei are harder than, say, Pokemon or something. To create a well-balanced game, then, the designer should strive to create an encounter rate so that the average number of enemies the player naturally comes across in their adventure will have them end up with stats that'll make most fights challenging, but fair. Of course, the EXP and currency each battle provides can also be adjusted, so you don't have to raise the encounter rate so high it'd end up being frustrating. It's all a balancing act to make sure the player is about as powerful as you'd expect them to be at any given point in the game. If you're playing a well-made RPG, a lot of this stuff just blends into the background and you don't even notice it. If this balance is off, you end up with a game that requires you to do a dedicated grinding session every time a tougher than normal enemy comes around, or a game where you can just mindlessly mash attack to clear every boss. In my experience, Voice of Cards leans slightly to the latter. I didn't see a game over screen a single time in my run, and I maybe had a character fall in battle 3-4 times, and the only time I thought, damn, might not make it through this one, was on the last boss. However, I do have to mention a quick caveat. You see, in Voice of Cards, you reveal tiles by walking next to them. Then, unless you're in a dark dungeon, you can jump to any tile that you've previously revealed. Now, the worm that lives in my brain demands I flip over every single tile I come across, including brushing up on every corner just to reveal wall tiles I can't even walk to. I am extremely confident that other than that one section where you can't really wait around, I revealed every single tile in this game, and rarely use the jump feature to expedite this process. Not to mention, I also did about every side quest in the game, collected the majority of the strongest equipment, and went out of my way to fight enough monsters in each area to earn the reverse side of their cards, a mechanic I'll get to in a sec. Does this mean that I encountered a higher number of, encounters than the devs expected me to? Gonna say, I probably think so. It's highly likely the game was balanced around the average number of monsters you'd encounter fully using the jump feature, / not flipping over every single useless tile like your controller's gonna pull a gun on you if you don't. Your mileage may vary, but to me, yeah, it was pretty easy. This game is hot out of the oven, so I don't think it's worth going too much into the story and characters, but just as a quick brief, your main character is named by you, the player, and is on a quest to slay the dragon for fame and fortune. Mostly fortune. You're accompanied by a small but diverse cast of characters, each with their own roles in battle. It's a 3-person party game, so you're encouraged to swap party members around to better tackle certain fights. Also, game gets points for leveling your reserve party members at the same rate as your active ones. Thank God for that, every modern RPG needs to do this, you know the deal. Your main character is largely defined through choices that you, the player, make in dialogue. None of these choices have an impact on some pretend morality system. You mostly just do it to, play a role in a role-playing game. Wow. One question you might have is whether or not you should play the demo, and to that, I'm gonna give a big yes. Not only does it contain a dungeon and questline that's completely unique to it, it also functions as a prologue to the main game, fleshing out the backstory of a certain trio of characters. I usually don't bother with demos, but I think you don't really have a lot to lose by giving this one a shot. So, here's the question on everyone's mind, and sorry it took so long to get here, but pacing, you know how it is. Has the madman done it again? Is Voice of Cards a bona fide Yoko Taro game? After poring over countless books on the subject, I think I can answer that question. Mathematically, Okay, so welcome to my bar graph. So, here, you've got Yoko Taro-ness, which is represented by this line. At the top, you've got NieR, which is, definitive Yoko Taro-ness. And down here, you've got, I don't know, Yoshi's Island or something. Then down here, you've got time played. So, Voice of Cards starts off right in the middle, because, you gotta give it the benefit of the doubt. We don't know yet. Game starts out, and you're thinking, like, okay. And then you're like, I don't know, maybe he just wanted to make, like, a traditional RPG. Maybe that's fine. So then it kind of bottoms out, but, oh, hang on, it's going up. Okay, wait, maybe we've got something here, and then, okay, no, it's going way up, okay, but it levels off again, and maybe it's got a dip here and there, but then, right before the end, you're like, whoa, and you end off here. So, it's not quite at the same level of what NieR is, but it definitely is more Yoko Taro than it is not Yoko Taro. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I'm gonna be real, it never quite reaches the heights that NieR does, but the game is dripping with that signature Yoko Taro flavor juice. I don't expect you to take my word for it, let's have a closer look. When you interact with NPCs or beat monsters a set number of times, you earn their card backs, a bit of expanded lore on them with some extra backstory. I don't think this is a spoiler, since this is literally one of, if not the first card back you earn in the game, so let's take a look. Yeah, I don't think I need to explain what went on there. It's all really well written, enough to the point where I was grinding out each monster in every area to get all the card backs. Second, in NieR fashion, this game is chock full of references to other games. Sure, we had a Zelda item get reference in NieR Replicant, but in Voice of Cards, you find an ocarina. That helps you get out of the Lost Woods. Yeah, I know some people can interpret this as the reference being beaten over your head, but I kinda like it. There's this one part where you have to find a spry fish to help someone recover, and that's a definite reference to getting the shaman fish in NieR Replicant. Now, I may just be crazy, and this might be way off. This is true, but I'm looking at this man, his hair color, and his hairstyle, and tell me that he's not meant to be a reference to NieR the protagonist. Only me? Just me seeing it? Okay. You've also got this dude that's cursed to parrot NPC dialogue till the day he keels over. Do with that what you will. For this next part, I'm gonna very briefly say something about the structure of this game. I want to make it clear, I don't consider any of this spoilers. I'm not gonna talk plot details or anything, mostly about the game's length and that. But, if you want to know absolutely zero about this game before you play it, then maybe skip ahead 90 seconds or so. I don't know, I'll put a timestamp on the screen or something. First off, for anyone thinking this game was going to be a bait and switch, we were told it's not a Drakengard or NieR game, and it is indeed, factually not a Drakengard or NieR game. I know it was tempting to think the multiple times we were assured that this was its own thing was a lie, and it was going to turn into a stealth Drakengard 4 at the last minute, but that isn't the case. However, this game is similarly structured like a Drakengard or NieR game. A Draken-NieR game, if you will. The game has multiple endings, because at this point what Yoko Taro game doesn't, and it gives you the ability to go through on a New Game Plus. You can use this New Game Plus to clean up the multiple endings, assuming you've fulfilled the requirements, or you can do the same thing NieR Replicant lets you do for endings C and D, and reload your save before the final boss to save time. Unless you're me, where I was halfway through my 4th NieR playthrough before I realized that was an option. Hooray, I got to do the fun, not totally slow boat section in Episode Mermaid a 4th time. As for the length, I want to stress, I did about every main and side activity the game had to offer, and since I played it all on days 1 and 2 after release, everything was done without a guide. By the time I hit credits on my first ending, I had clocked around 14 hours. Of course, after that I did go back for the other endings, as well as some post-game stuff. I'd say all in all, maybe 16 to 18 hours total? That's not a lot for an RPG. RPGs aren't long because some dark law mandates them to be. They usually are because the way they're structured requires a player to engage with slowly changing mechanics and complex characters over a long period of time to experience their growth. That's not to say short RPGs don't exist. Games like the first Final Fantasy can be beaten in about 15 hours or so, but they do make the sacrifice of being pretty bare bones in terms of story and character development. I'd say Voice of Cards is just pushing up against what can be considered the minimum. It really does feel like as soon as the adventure gets going, it's almost over. Again, I don't think this kills the game, but I definitely wouldn't have complained if it was 5 or so hours longer, had a higher level cap, and gave the characters more time to develop. I do gotta remind myself though, this is a AA game being sold at half price. Does that give it a pass for all of its problems? No, but it at least makes them a bit more understandable. Just a few things about presentation before we wrap this whole thing up. Obviously, if you're gonna go for an art style as bold as everything is card, you've gotta back it up by making those cards nice to look at. And I mean, do I gotta say it? You see it. Visual section cancelled. Nah, but really, I'm a self-appointed Fire Emblem enjoyer. Never played Fire Emblem Heroes, but Drakengard 3 illustrator Kimihiko Fujisaka killed it here. His illustrations really do bring these 3.5 by 2 flat pieces of thick paper to life. There is some reused art for enemies of the same type, but that's an RPG standard, so I can give it a pass. The music is also really good, and I feel like I'm saying shit's good a lot, but I mean it's true. The music was partially done by NieR Replicant and Automata composer Keiichi Okabe, and I mean, did you expect it not to be quality? The majority of the music has some real Irish Celtic vibes, but it switches to a vocal song done by Emmy Evans that sounds like a lost track from the NieR soundtrack real quick. The game has multiple composers, and I guess you could consider it a negative that you can tell extremely easily which track was composed by who, but I mean the music slaps. Promise not to laugh at me, but I was getting goosebumps during the ending sequence, and no small part of that was due to the music going all out. Kingdom Hearts 3, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, Death Stranding, Ghost of Tsushima, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered, Cyberpunk 2077, NieR Replicant, Voice of Cards The Owl Dragon Roars. This is a complete, exhaustive list of games I've purchased on day 1 from 2019 to 2021. This is not a long list of games. I don't usually buy my games for full price. Keep that in mind when I say if you asked me whether I would buy Voice of Cards for full price again now, yeah, I probably would. It kinda helps that full price for Voice of Cards is half of a normal game. There's a lot of good in Voice of Cards. There's a lot of not so good as well, but while there are some objectively bad points, I think a lot comes down to personal taste. Do I think you should buy Voice of Cards? I don't know, I'm not gonna tell you what to do, I ain't no shill. A lot of this game really clicks with me, enough so where I can give a lot of what doesn't a pass. I think it really depends on you. Do you like Yoko Taro games? This game is packed full of that kind of style, although to a lesser degree. Do you like very traditional turn-based RPGs? You've got a robust, but simple one here. Do you really like tabletop games? Well, there's not a lot else out there that scratches that specific itch like this one does. If you've watched this whole video and are totally uninterested in what you see, it's probably best to trust your instincts, or at least wait for a heavy sale. If you're liking some points of this game, but you're not so sure about the whole one voice actor all cards thing, literally, just give the demo a shot. It's an hour-long vertical slice of what you can expect from the full game, so see how you feel when you come out of it. In my opinion, there's some room for improvement, but to me, it's pretty much everything I wanted and expected it to be. If you've played it, let me know what you think of it. If you've played it and you've never played a Yoko Taro game before, I especially want to know what you think about it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm pretty close to getting the platinum, so I think I'm gonna go continue doing that. Thanks for watching. Till next time.